My name is Sriram, and tonight I will take you with me for a spectacular walk in the abode of snow, the Himalaya. A story written by Bernie Golay. So dim the light in the room and lie down comfortably. Take a moment to feel your body sinking into the mattress. Take a deep breath in and out. And now, picture yourself at the end of a day of trekking in the Himalaya. You're sitting on an overlook. Across the valley is the spine of a mountain. And beyond it, you count 6 more ridge lines. The more distant mountains stand taller. Tree-covered mountain tops give way to grassy ridges, and those to rocky tops, and finally to the snow-capped peaks. The highest and the most distant peak is white, fully clad in snow and ice. You take a couple breaths, slow and full breaths. You feel refreshed by the brisk air, so clean and cool. On your hike, you pass over mountains where the air was thin. You sometimes felt winded like you'd been running, but you'd only been slowly walking. Now, resting in this mountain meadow, you appreciate the air in a way that only one who has experienced a shortage of something can. You feel the life-giving energy of that air. You notice the deodars and the thick green grass, and know that vegetation gives off the oxygen that makes this air so vitalizing. The sun is hanging low. Having already set up your tent and collected firewood, you decide to stay and watch the sunset. As the sun drops lower under the thin streaks of cloud, the white peak in the distance warms to an orange glow, like steel coming out of a furnace. Layers of clouds take on brilliant colors from salmon orange to hot pink to royal purple. The mountains in the foreground become indistinct because they sit in the shadows of their looming brethren. Ridges that had earlier been sharply defined are now blurred bands of slightly different hues, ranging from dark green to black. As the highest ridge flames into brilliance, the lower ones converge into blackness. When the ball of sun has dropped entirely behind the mountains, there is still enough light for your short walk back to your tent. In the dim light, you best see the trees and other shapes silhouetted against the backdrop of sky. The rest is faint and ill-defined. It draws attention to your other senses. You notice the lack of sound from moving water. All day, there has at least been a feeble gurgling sound from the nearest stream. Such a stream runs down the slope on the far side of your camp. You've grown so accustomed to this sound that the absence of it catches your attention. When you stop and listen, you can barely hear it. The softness of the sound is partly because the stream is so small, you could step over it in a single stride. But it's also because the steady drone of insects is on the rise. As you walk down the slope toward your campsite, you feel the earth underfoot. You've taken your boots off and left them in your tent to allow your feet to air out after a long day in boots. And so, you walk through the lush grass, feeling the blades of grass compress and spring up under your feet. The grass is cool and damp, and there is something pleasant in walking barefoot through the meadow. More than just cooling your feet, it transports you back to times of childhood innocence. The walk down the slope from the overlook to your campsite takes only a few minutes. It's still darker now, but when you reach your tent, there is still enough light to recognize its domed shape and the blackened patch of soil nearby. That is your fire pit. You make sure your sleeping bag is ready and then gather your torch and the materials you'll need to prepare dinner. By the time it is completely dark, you are arranging wood in the fire pit. You stack wood in a loose and airy fashion over a pile of twig tinder. The fire will make your evening tea and heat your dinner. As you can only see the patch of light lit by your headlamp torch, you listen to the changing soundscape. The shepherds have long since gathered flocks for night, far from your campsite. The baa of sheep and clanging of bells has been replaced by the call and cry of nocturnal birds and animals, and by the chirping and clicking of insects. The sound is loud, but like the crashing waves at the seashore, it's soothing in its uniformity. Soon you have a blazing fire, and the whoosh and crackle burning wood is the sound you hear most clearly. As you wait for water to roll to a boil, you sit mesmerized by the orange tongues of flame that lick up from around the charred wood. You watch the sandy hue of natural wood blacken. Seeing the flame, feeling its warmth against your face, you feel a connectedness to those who lived long ago. You share a linkage to ancestors who sat around fires like this one. Were they as engrossed by the sight of fire as you are? For them, fire was life-changing. At home, it would never occur to you to think about how fire changed humankind. Those tongues of flame allowed food to be cooked and more of its nutrients harnessed. It made it possible for people to venture into cold climes. That dazzling dance of energy changed humanity forever. You drink your tea and eat your dinner, listening to the hoots of owls and the squeaks of bats. After you've had your dinner, you watch the fire fade, offering it no more fuel. Watching the glowing embers cool and the black, unburnt wood collect a coat of grey ash. Eventually, you douse the flame to make sure no hot coals will flare up while you sleep. As you glance skyward, you notice something different about the sky. You're not sure what it is at first. But in the absence of light, your night vision soon grows stronger. You realize this isn't the night sky you're used to seeing. In the city, where street lamps and security lights are always burning, the night sky consists of sparsely spaced points of light. Here, you see not only points of light, but clouds of color. Despite the chill air, you lay back in the soft grass and stare up at the sky, lost in the spectacle of nebulae and distant galaxies. While you may in the past have felt insignificant in the face of such vastness, you now feel unburdened because your problems are not so huge when viewed against the grandeur of all that is. Retreating to your tent, you crawl inside and secure the flaps. You wriggle into your sleeping bag, letting your body heat build up to warm your now chilled feet and hands. You feel the fatigue of a long day of walking the highlands. Just as you earlier felt a wave of gratitude for the air because you'd known thin air, you are now especially thankful for the opportunity to rest your body. You feel this thankfulness along with an intense wave of relaxation as you let all the tension drain from your body. Your body seems to sink towards the ground as your muscles go slack. This level of relaxation is felt only at the edge of exhaustion. Scenes from the day's travel form in your mind's eye, unbidden, as you no longer have the desire or energy to actively control your thoughts. Images flow like the streams you walked next to earlier in the day, drifting steadily, surrendering to the lay of the land. In that state of drift, you lose any distinction between you and the earth below you or the sky above you. You feel one with everything, from the blade of grass that was between your toes as you walked the meadow, to the distant galaxies you saw moments earlier while looking skyward. You accept that your mind is drifting towards sleep. The random images that float into your mind's eye are gone as quickly as they arrive. Nestled amidst the mountains, you draw on their immense power to be unmoved by whatever comes to mind. The tent and closed eyelids have shut out the light. The tent's fabric keeps the wind from reaching you. And even most of the smell of lingering smoke from the recently extinguished fire is kept at bay. This leaves only thrum of birds and insects to shape the images from your subconscious. The insect's din forms a soothing white noise, and the bird song is scant and distant. Even those sounds are becoming less distinct. They are part of a web of existence, a web of which you are a part as well. Drifting into sleep, you soon find yourself in a dream world. In your dreams, you revisit the mountains, massifs, meadows, and streams from your journey so far. You're walking in an alpine meadow. The green grass has been cropped short by grazing sheep and cows. Trails crisscross through the sod, where the livestock and shepherds on horseback pass through the meadow when they're on a drive, but not when they are leisurely pasturing as they are now. A few brown boulders sits solemnly amidst the grass, a touch of the ancient set against the vibrant vegetation. You feel the sun's warmth on your face. The rolling meadow lays under an azure dome adorned by fluffy clouds. Bird call is constant. Hawks and eagles circle on updrafts while little chattering birds flit from branch to branch. The sheep exchange calls of ba, accompanied by the dull clang of the bells around their necks. One can hear and feel through the ground horses taking to gallop, spurred by the shepherd boys, eager to break up the monotony of watching their flocks by racing. Following the trail, you crest a rise, and across the valley looms an imposing wall of grey granite topped in white. You're close enough to see that some of the white patches have the gleam of ice. Snow has roofed the mountain. Gracefully bowed patches of white smooth out the rocky shapes. And as the high winds whip over such patches, dustings of powdery snow swirl in the air. You feel that the air is much cooler here. However, the chill comes from the wind sliding over a glacier, picking up its cool air and channeling it onto you. It's nature's own air conditioning. You pause and enjoy the briskness of the air as your eyes remain locked on the grandiosity of the jagged ridge line and the snowscape before you. A feeling of awe builds as you imagine the force it must have taken to furrow the world like this, shoving monolithic plates of rock skyward, folding granite as a schoolchild folds paper. Glancing downward, you see that the far side of the slope you've climbed is laden with cairns, rock stacks piled up from the stones that have broken off and fallen into the scree. Most of the cairns are small, 5 or 6 stones stacked from rocks that could be picked up in one hand. However, some are more grandiose, with base stones too large for a man to carry. Is this how one pays respect for this display of nature's grandeur? You resolve to move your own fatigued muscles to make a monument to the spectacle. Perhaps it will pay tribute to the wind for the cool breeze that rewarded you after a day under the blazing sun. After taking a long rest, watching the clouds alternately hide and expose the mountain, you seek out your own stones to make a cairn of your own. You select flat-sided rocks that can bear one another when stacked in a tower. Each stone is hefted in hand to familiarize yourself with its weight and shape, noting how few cairns have toppled, seeing in that longevity the sanctity with which hikers built their monuments. You take the task seriously. You build a 6-stone stack, topped a pyramid-shaped stone. Once you're confident in the stability of your monument, you resume your trek. Crossing over the pass, the trail dips back down, below the tree line, into an evergreen forest. The scent of pine wafts through the air, reminding you of the clean smell of cleansers that copy that smell. That clean smell is ironically intermingled with a musty scent, and you notice the dampness of this side of the mountain. Even if you didn't feel the cloak of dampness against your skin, you'd know it from the vivid green mosses that cling to the stone boulders on this section of trail. There are fern patches where the fiddleheads scroll, and they wave as you tussle them with your hand while you're passing down the trail. As your hike takes you downward along the side of the mountain towards the valley floor, the sound of rushing water is a constant companion. Sometimes it's the faint and distant murmur of a small creek. In other places, it's the pounding sound of a column of water driving down onto the rocks in a cascading waterfall. You reach the valley floor and welcome a flat walk alongside the flowing stream. Clear water rushes over smooth, rounded stones that gleam in the sunlight. You kneel down beside the water to wash your hands and splash your face. The water is frigidly cold, and you wonder how long ago these water droplets were ice-locked in a glacier. Probably not more than a day. Pressing your hands into the water, you can only hold them there for a minute or so before the icy water becomes unbearable. The bitterly cold water is refreshing against your skin and vitalizes you, preparing you to continue your journey. After crossing a bridge built from fallen logs, you follow the trail as it begins to climb. The vegetation here is dry. Trees are sparsely seen, and tan grass stands in dense tufts. There is much more exposed stone on this section of trail. Large rocks that have crumbled from the mountain, sometimes disintegrating in the fall, lay about in random shapes and sizes. This is the sunny side of the mountain, and the rain doesn't often fall here. Only in the mountains and in dreams can one go from woodland to desert in just a few steps. Mountains force the air to drop its moisture. Air rises and cools as it's pushed over a mountain, dropping torrents of rain on musty, mossy parts of the mountain and leaving arid patches like this one bone dry. Your walk brings you back to a grassy meadow. You walk through a valley in miniature with rolling knolls to either side. This mountaintop was long ago cleaved in half and now has two ridges running in parallel. Boulders are strewn about like the dice of the gods. Giant cubic stones sit amidst the pasture lands. Your hike unexpectedly takes you through a marshy patch. The ground is muddy from a flow of water that hasn't yet cut a channel into the soil to form a stream. You notice the greener, more succulent grass in the patch where the water flows. The murmur of a tiny stream can be heard up ahead where the water has merged. When the breeze blows, that stream sound is lost among the rush of air. This wet patch shows you how water droplets come together humbly, adhere to one another, until they become mighty rivers like the Ganga, the Indus, or the Yamuna. The water that has dripped past your shoe will not be stopped on its march to the sea. As the trail drops down again, you see the site where you'll camp for the night. There's a stone cabin built as a cookhouse, sitting amid the green grass. Besides the cookhouse and the random boulders The only gap in the grass is the circular, blackened patch of a fire pit. This cabin on the meadow is a pretty sight. You decide to pitch your tent there.